Hi, folks. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. So, today we'll talk about eating the elephant. Um, Obviously, it's not we're going to eat an elephant, but it's a metaphor that we say that elephant is something very big, very hard to handle. And how do you tackle something that is very big in nature? It is a big goal, it's a big project. And I think as architects, we only eat elephants, right? Um, there's nothing smaller than an elephant an architect is supposed to eat. Okay. There's never something that is given which is like bite sized and you just plop it into the mouth and go. I mean, hardly an architect comes across a problem like that. Okay. If he is, then he's a developer and not an architect in today's scenario. So essentially, we'll talk about three aspects, right? What are the elephants that we deal with? Okay, so elephants come in different colors, African elephant, Indian elephant, like that, right? So what are the different types of elephants that exist? That is one thing. Second, how do we even know that we are trying to eat an elephant? A lot of times we kind of don't recognize that we are eating elephants. And third, we will go ahead and figure out how to actually eat them, which means tackle them or get that done. So, like for example, one of the things which I find eating an elephant is, as an architecture, I would say building consensus is what I would say, right? Getting different stakeholders to agree to a new idea is an elephant that I have to deal with. And if you take Tiny Magic itself, let's say the challenge of helping organizations and teams understand that learning is not a 1 day, 2 day, or a 5 day activity. Okay, it is a prolonged, continuous, sustained activity. Conventionally, people have used 1 day, 2 day kind of a training or a 3 day, 5 day training. But changing their mindset to we have to have something sustainable and long term and in the context of our work is a huge change. So that's an elephant that I'm dealing with. Okay, there's a goal that I want to reach and helping people even align to that goal. Forget taking steps. Just looking at it and understanding itself is an elephant, which I have to deal with. Okay. Any other examples of elephants that you can think of? Deepak, maybe you.
I think any large project where you have complex set of requirements or complex dependencies, those things I would say consider that as elephants, because if you have large number of people you have to speak to, same thing as consensus building, but from the technical perspective, right, where you have multiple systems or multiple databases, right? All those kinds of
or three more architects.
So where you have to talk to multiple architects also, right? As a I do not know the technical term we use for such an architect who is coordinating and sort of aligning all those technical dependencies. But that is, I would say, that is an example of eating an elephant.
Okay, got it. Venkat?
So if you take any project, or it doesn't matter, any whether it is software or construction, whenever you wanted to go the scale up, then you have to know ready to eat an elephant, right? Scalability point of view. So whenever if you so as Deepak said, when you need to tag multiple parties, when you are scaling up, when you are dealing the bigger project, then you need to ready for the elephant.
So let me just introduce Jiffin. Jiffin works with IBS. IBS is a Cochin-based travel and airlines and transportation. They offer products and services. So he works over there. Quick intro of the people. Deepak is from Microsoft. He's a operations system ITIL with a lot of years. I know him from Microsoft with a lot of experience. Venkat is the engineering lead from a farming startup called AquaConnect. And Avinash is a lead architect with Unisys. Okay, so what we were basically discussing, Jiffin, is how to deal with elephants. Okay, so when I say elephants are something very big, and as architects, we typically have to deal with very large and big things. And we're just sharing. First round, we are basically sharing what are the elephants that we have fixed. Okay, so I was talking about helping people shift a mindset of why a product should exist, right? Or why a solution should, a new idea for a solution. It is like changing everybody's mindset is a elephant by itself. In your experience, right, so if you have to think something that is very big to handle, what would you think you have come across an elephant which you had to handle?
Yeah, definitely mindset is a one case. Again, I think switching the technology will also be a problem for most of the people.
That's a
Like
good point.
when we have something available new, it's like most of the cases. Okay, I could say like with my team members, like junior people, they prefer to write their own code. So I would recommend, in the sense like even for like a example, for smaller functionality, like maybe the sorting or maybe do some kind of a data beautification modifications. So I always recommend to go for some existing libraries.
Okay.
Because one thing is it is quick. Second is about it is more likely less bug, right?
Correct.
So it's kind of a trust basically when we go for any library. So whenever I get something, I used to search for kind of any Apache libraries available or any something available. But team members, like, they used to say like, I mean, I may not be knowing the library name, so I would be saying like, you just Google for a library, find out something, then do some kind of an attempt in a standalone Hello World, then copy it. So people feel like, okay, they need to search it and try out. They need to spend like a half day. Rather, they would be saying, okay, I can go for a typical self-written library function. So I always need to spend a lot of time convince them like why should we okay, so whatever the arguments I'm saying, like error free or things, they will have the same arguments with me. Like if they are writing, they know that their conference, their code is error free. Why we should rely on somebody else's code? Okay, so always
the things like, if there's a bug that comes in that, how will I fix it? Here I will take okay, got it. Okay, so they actually call it as NIH syndrome. It's called not invented here syndrome.
Okay.
We kind of keep joking, and it's actually it's kind of interesting. You can start quoting that NIH, and everybody does it. Like, I write a module, the next guy won't take it. He says, you know what, I didn't write it, I can't fix it. So it's an anti-fractal basically. Good point. Avinash, you had something to share?
Yes, Kumaran. Same point, I would like to extend what Venkat was talking about. I'm actually correlating with our current scenario where we have one built-in system. So that system is let's suppose that solution is actually vast in its own all aspects, in fact. So it's a CMS system that we are going to migrate. So in that migration also, we have a big system already developed over the years, and it has evolved. So now when we are going to migrate it to the newer technology or some other technology, or doing a replatforming, then in that time, that system itself is a kind of a huge thing, and it's kind of an element, we can say like that. And again, for a new system which we want to bring in place, we have to do all sort of analysis. We have to see the capabilities, whether all the systems will provide what my existing system was having, plus what users want on top of that, which they were using since a long time. So yeah, I mean, of course, again, it becomes an Herculean task to go and chase every other vendor, what the other CMSs are offering, plus uh, get them with their demo, or assess them what are their capabilities, and how it will help me to achieve what we were doing, and what are the matching the expectations, all these things. I feel that this is all is elephant.
Very good point. And it's kind of interesting. If you see, all of them are kind of connected. The elephants, probably we're talking about the same elephant, right? We're looking at it from different angles, or the ears, like that. So, like, the moment you chase a new content management system, you will run into Jiffin's problem. They will say, you know what, in that thing, Drupal, I could do it easy. In this, I cannot.
Correct.
Okay, the developer will say, you know what, that code was faster, this is slow. So that, again, probably, I think it's kind of one leading to another thing, right? Or it goes into Deepak's thing. Like, for example, they'll say, hey, you know what, for that API I had made, now you got a new system, you're asking a new API, I cannot change. So there is an upstream application or a downstream application. Now you tell them, I'm going to change my CMS solution. The API is different, the signature is different. Hey, get lost, man. You are changing your application. Why should I go and change my code? It's not my problem that you want to change CMS. Correct? Yes. So it kind of goes into that Deepak's thing. So very nice capture of how the elephant manifests itself. Correct? And okay, so in my case, let's just talk about how these blockers come up, right? When you're teaching with elephants, how the blockers actually manifest when we are doing it. What is an elephant we have? How does it cause a problem for me? Elephants, typically it is one of the things is we try to make these calls, right? And when I say calls, I'm talking about making sales calls or meetings and try to make people understand. And it becomes very hard and we fail, right? And unless we kind of shift the whole thing, I feel very stuck. That's how I feel that I have hit an elephant. That is, I'm putting my efforts, but nothing moves, right? It's kind of stuck there, or the progress is very slow. Then I know that, okay, I have hit an elephant here. So that's how so basically we do some 5 meetings. After that, we will kind of ask, the indication that comes is the stakeholders will say, what you are telling is interesting, but I still have to kind of think how it will fit within my system. So this is the signal that I get, right? The moment they say I still have to think how it fits, they actually haven't got what I told. Okay, because when they say learning is important and it is continuous, and then they say I still have to think how it will fit within my system, or we have a different model of doing it, I know that, okay, now that elephant is blocking my path. Okay, I'm not able to move forward. So maybe Venkatesh, different, right? I think how will you know that the elephant has now blocking your path? Because elephant is an invisible thing. It's a metaphor.
So again and again we are facing the same problem again and again when we are trying to solve a problem. Again we are facing the same problem. So that's how I know that okay.
That's interesting. So can you give an example of when you say again and again you face the same problem? Is it similar to what Jiffin was telling? Like every time he asks them to try to use the same thing, the developers come with the same thing. Like I will write my own code, it will become better. Our teams tell the same thing. Is that what you are meaning?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get the perfect example. Still.
Okay, so we'll come back to you. Maybe you need some time to think. That's okay.
Yeah.
So Deepak, Avinash, you have anything where you pick up a signal that okay, now I'm blocked by elephant?
So I think the way to look at the way what you described as an elephant, I think that's a different perspective from sort of starting to eat the elephant, right? So because this is like you're already eating the elephant, but then some other elephant comes and stops you from eating that elephant, right?
Okay.
So
I guess that's a good point that you make. What I was just trying to say is sometimes we don't even know we are dealing with an elephant. First we have to recognize I'm dealing with the elephant, then you think. Otherwise we think I'm just dealing with a typical run-of-the-mill issue.
No, I think the distinction I'm trying to make is that when we start something, it is always an elephant, right? There is a given, right? There is a given, right? So now we figured out how to eat it, and then we did everything, right? Now we are on the path. Right. So, in fact, when you told.
So that's interesting. You're talking about another elephant. Okay.
Yeah. So now you see, because that's the difficult part now, right? Because now, so how many elephants can you eat while you're eating already? Right. So,
how many elephants you can eat at the same time? Okay.
Right. So because when you said about the metaphor, I just actually looked at, I just searched for it. It says eating elephant metaphor, and then the first thing which sort of popped up was don't eat the elephant one bite at a time. Right. So that was actually I started reading that while all of you were talking, and the interesting thing what it said was, because if you try to eat one bite at a time, the elephant is so big that it will start smell after some time. Right? So actually, I can tell you that the site is called achievethegreenberetsway.com, something like that. Right? So you can search for it. It is. So what he's talking about is that if one person is trying to eat the elephant, it is a bad idea. So because you cannot really do it. It takes a village. So you bring the village and you do it all together, then everybody sticks in the fork and starts eating it. So then the elephant won't smell after some time, right? Because only one person is eating it. So just that was just a humorous aside, but that is an important concept that don't try to eat the elephant yourself, right? So if one person tries to eat the elephant, it is definitely going to stink after some time. So that is the extension of the metaphor, to make sure that you have more people with you when you try to do such a big task. Don't try to do it alone. That is the message, I guess. But what you described as an impediment or as a blocker, I would say the signs of that would be when you hit an impasse, there is no go, right? That when your options become zero, right? So what do I do now? If there is I have no options but to take either one path which I already don't like, etc. Right? Though that is where I would say you look at that is this an elephant? Right? Is this that the metaphorical elephant blocking your way, which you cannot eat your way out, right? Because you need to just poke the elephant and make it move aside. In that case, probably no. Don't try to eat that elephant yourself.
Okay. So basically, when you kind of hit that pause or the place where you're kind of not moving.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. That's interesting. So one of the ways, right? Like once you kind of detect it, the question then comes out like, how is it even possible to save something, right? Or handle that. I'm just starting off with one thought I had in mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be that all the way, but from the basic Hypoha kind of a system, right? So what we kind of take about is what I call as the happy bullocks, right? So we kind of it's a derivative of Mihali's flow model, and we say that when I don't have like, let's say I'm at a low skill level, and so let me just make this like that. So let's say I am at a low skill, okay, and my challenge is too high, and somewhere I'm over here and things are not moving. One of the ways to get something moving is to reduce the challenge of what I want to do. So in my case, for example, one thing that I tried to do is when people had a problem of understanding what we were doing, and we were talking about a 4-month program like that, one thing we kind of did is I actually dropped down the challenge to say, let's start about applying it here. Okay, so we need the 4 months because we want to apply it. So I kind of moved my solution, which was at the highest point, which was at point 1, and I kind of moved it all the way down to here with the skill that I had. The low skill I had was to convince senior stakeholders. So I dropped it down. So basically I made a 4-month program into a 4-hour program to start with, which means I said that instead of making all my tools and conveying everything to everybody, what I thought I would actually do is make it simple such that I can actually do a 4-hour session where they can actually apply it in their context. So I started doing a couple of 4-hour sessions with them, and once they could see, then I could kind of say, you know what, now when people walk out of that 4-hour session, they just don't, it's not that they just know something, they have also solved a problem which they came in with, which means they have applied it. And that is the difference that we are trying to bring about, where they actually apply what they have learned, and it's not about knowing, but it's about doing. So that's one thing which has kind of helped traction. Now, what happened, luckily because of that, is when people walked out, they could actually say, yes, this made sense, compared to another session. And there were a lot of verbal feedback telling, usually we come out of these sessions knowing it, but here we have something concrete. We really want to go back to our desk and try it. Okay. So that kind of changed the perspective of the stakeholders. Not that it was like I did this and all customers got it, but it increased my percentage by around 25 to 30% of doing. So basically, instead of asking them to go from 0 to 4 months, let's try it out, this 4-hour thing was an interesting thing. And then we kind of have a 1-month module now like that. So I would kind of, this is the way I reduced the challenge. And tying back into a concept in Hypoha is what popularly we call it as an MVP approach or an agile approach. So a minimum viable product. Now, typically minimum viable product is in technology, but here I'm taking it for a course content, for a meeting. I'm just calling that a minimum viable product for the customer. So by reducing the challenge and doing this, in my scenario, it is much easier. And I think now I realize, Deepak, I was doing what you were telling also. It is like if I had taken the classical approach of 1 bite at a time, right? It is like I keeping on talking to the sales guy week after week, month after month, let's say the senior stakeholder over there. And by the time it's 6 months, the elephant starts thinking. That means that guy knows, oh, Kumaran is going to come, he's going to talk about this program. Right? And he refuses a meeting for me. Yeah, Vinesh.
Yeah, Kumaran, I want to add one relevant example what I came across.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a marathoner and I have done couple of 50Ks and couple of full marathons also.
Oh, okay.
So, and in marathon world, actually, it is saying that after 16 miles or something like 32 kilometers, 35 kilometers, you will hit a wall. Okay, where all our resources in our body, like it is primarily the glycogen, which gets depleted, which is a energy source for us to keep moving. So what happens? All our resources get depleted, and we will hit a wall. So your body, your mindset will say that no, I can't. I have to just get rid of this thing, and then I'll stop, and I won't move further.
Okay.
So what happens in that scenario? Even I mean, most of the coaches will prefer like to say that don't think about the 42. Okay, just move ahead step by step, one step to the next, like this, or just break it down into the 1 kilometer 1 kilometer milestone. Let's suppose you have to complete the 32. Then see what you have to do the 34, like a 1 kilometer bite approach, bite by bite approach. So yeah, I mean that is like the same thing that most of the guys will do, who are the amateurs or who are the actually novice, you can say, the first timers who are completing their marathons and all this. Once you get a practice, and then you that mindset that that I also can correlate with the happy bullocks, where we are actually just narrowing down the challenges, right? So likewise, we will have to proceed. Otherwise, if we just think about the bigger picture, then probably we will fail.
We'll get stuck. Good point.
Yeah,
Good connection between this and that. Definitely. And also, I think, Deepak, I was realizing that getting other people also to eat. So when I'm able to do workshops, I can get more people and do more workshops. I can do 3 workshops, 4 workshops. That means more people are eating. It's not me alone meeting somebody. Yes. And then now I have different people to talk. Each person talks differently, like that. So kind of interesting. Like I just realized it's better to have the structure in mind. So what you said gives that structure. So different in your case, right? How do you tackle this elephant of people wanting to do their own things, or they are resistant to a new technology? And the new technology is not just an individual, right? It could be a team. It could be a sales guy. It could be the operations team. Like you want to move from, let's say, Oracle to MySQL. Now, the classical problem is there is 2 Oracle certified DBAs. Now you go to MySQL, what is his certification? His certification becomes useless. Yeah. Right? So, what you are, something like that, right? So, how do you tackle an elephant or eat it?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I noticed, like, we alone cannot attempt that bigger problem, because we have the same, I mean, like, I was into a maintenance project, and we were using the Oracle DB like 2008. Now that has to get upgraded into 13, I guess. Okay, so it was like a old system, and it was an organizational decision. But we are the maintenance team, so we have like a 5-member team to maintain and support the application. But when this matter comes in, we need support from everybody. Okay. Because it's like we have around 25 teams in that project. Okay.
Oh,
and most of them are, most of them are working into the migration project. They're building a new platform. Okay. So their primary responsibility to build the new platform. Okay. Whenever there is a production issue or kind of a things in their own area, they'll come and fix it.
Okay.
But when this migration comes in picture, it's like a huge effort, right? So
they have to do the entire testing
and testing things. Yeah. Okay. And since we are maintaining the legacy, there were not much automations.
Okay.
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 So okay, and the problem here, since it's a database, right? So we may not be aware like the end-to-end, all the minute scenarios and minute configuration data missing up things. Okay,
Hmm.
and they were doing it with the different steps and all, pre launch steps and all. But the final day, before the final day, 1 week before, the DB person said like, okay, uh, once we go with this, okay, and there won't be any comeback because it's live data. It takes around
Okay.
4 hours downtime
To
and
migrate.
migrate. And
Okay.
so because during that migration we will be doing the sanity alone. I mean, some kind of a bookings and things, and we'll go live. Once we go live, there won't be comeback.
Okay.
Okay. Then I said like, what's the alternative? We found an issue after 2 hours.
Hmm.
Then he said like, you have to fix it. I said, this is not a Java code. Like, if the database is not supporting, then how can I fix it? I need to make some alternative kind of things. That time it was a big challenge. Okay. And for me, it's sure that, I mean, we have only 3 people. Okay. It is sure that we are not going to fix it. Whether it is because it's kind of a, if the DB version not supporting, that going to be like, maybe we need to modify this. Lot of stored procedures are there. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and none of us know very hands-on on the stored procedures, and it was written very long back. So it was things, and we reached out to everybody, and everybody was offering like 1 hour support.
Just
During
to,
the
just to be clear, the problem here is some deprecated functions or some code.
No.
Correct?
No, problem here is we are migrating from 2008 to 2016.
Okay. So
The-
backward compatibility might not be there.
May
for
not be
some
there.
people. Okay. Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
And
Yeah.
okay, so but the real challenge is,
Hmm.
after we go live, there is an option to come back, since it's a production data. Okay, and if at all any breakage, that has to be fixed at the earliest, because okay, so the fixing time would be like kind of in 1 hour. Okay, and we don't know the problem, and we don't know how many problems will come.
Okay.
Okay, and we have only 3 people. Okay.
Very
And,
simple. No, you don't know the technology, you don't know the domain, you don't know the application. You just have to fix it in production
Fix it.
within 1 hour.
1
Very
hour.
simple. Correct.
Okay, so whenever we talk somebody, it says like, you are the maintenance team, and we are the development team. So maintenance team supposed to handle it. So I said like, how? Okay,
Hmm.
and I mean, only thing we can say like, we convey this message till the CO level. I mean CTO level,
Hmm.
and we got some representative from every team.
Okay.
They did some kind of an support during the thing, and luckily we didn't get any production issue. But still, I believe if could have been have some 1 or 2 issues, that would have been a failure, because it went with a. I mean, we did I think 6 to 7 rounds of testing in our DB team, replicate the same data and things, but actually this kind of migration, right? The real problem comes with the batch jobs or bulk data processing, which
Okay.
we cannot identify during our manual testing process. The
Hmm.
booking will success, but somehow processing the bulk data would have some problem. But yeah, and DB team also said like, they, based on the certain guidelines provided by Oracle, the change log, etc. They said like, they don't see any kind of a criticality. Okay, so from a Java application developer perspective, I went with a kind of an expert opinion. Okay, I got opinion from the DB person. I got opinion from our senior architects, and it's more like a theoretical comparison, like
Okay.
going through the change log and going through the Oracle expert recommendations and some application wise. And but I still believe like, there are like 20-25% risk, but somehow it went correctly. But that time people were not paying. I mean, people knows it's something went wrong, it would be a challenge, but they also don't see any other options. Okay, so it was an elephant. We planned only, I should say like, we planned like 80%, remaining 20% went for toss, and luckily we saved.
Got it. So it's kind of interesting. So if I kind of summarize what you just said, right, just to make sure I got it correct. So what you did is kind of extension of what Deepak said, involving more people. Don't try to do it by yourself alone. So collaboration is very important, and you involve different experts, got their opinions, and more meticulous research, detailed research, with instead of just trying to do a, when I say research, it's like understanding the problem more and getting a better clarity, right?
Yes,
Meetings and things like
yeah.
that.
And I also took a approach like the negative side. What happened if something failed after we go live, and what could be the impact chances? Whether the what could be like if the whether it impact the booking, live booking, or it will impact the post booking scenarios.
And did you also get some implicit agreement with the stakeholders? You know what?
Yeah,
I'm taking a risk here. If something happens, let us both sink together or swim together.
Definitely. I have taken that.
Okay.
So we have a senior architect at France. So we had a separate discussion, 1 hour discussion with him, and we covered all the negative scenarios. And so that was the agreement.
Nice, very nice listen. Deepak, you have.
So I think sometimes we try too hard. that's the feeling I get. One of the things which I realize, which is of course dependent on the risk-taking capacity of the stakeholders, right? Because if for example in Jiffin's case, he has a airline booking system, and he doesn't want to disrupt anything, right? There's no stakeholder who's going to agree to an experiment with the real-time booking system, right? So he has to do all those things. So what I'm thinking of is, how do you prevent such situation from occurring where it becomes so risky to change any small thing, right? So how do you, means as architects, this is my question to all of you, is how do you make this make systems which are able to sustain some amount of damage without being catastrophic, right? So this is what I think, because the reason why Jiffin has to go through all this thing is because originally the architecture is risk averse. It cannot take that risk, right? So this is my question to all of you. How do you prevent all this hard work which the maintenance team has to go through, right? Where you just, it's like a stack of cards now, right? I move one card, everything falls apart. So how do you prevent that from happening?
Yeah, but one thing in the same project which our CTO demanding is, they come up with a metrics, the technical depth metrics, okay, and we have a monthly report. So whereas the upgrades of particular software or library versions, etc., there should not be more than one major version. So whenever we cross that one major version, it pops up in red color, and it's like a hard code. We cannot have a further sprint releases if there is a technically red items. So that way they maintain the upgrades properly, and they actually moved away from the database perspective, moved away from the single dependency, single DP. They moved to microservices, and each service will have their own database, kind of, okay, NoSQL way. So whenever there is a common, many people depends on a single thing. They are disrupting that, because we also, even from the whatever the service layer, it's like when you visualize as a picture, when more people are trying to connect to a single point, whether it is an application, service, DB, whatever things, they're coming up with some the other way. And he also come up with a things concept, nothing but the resiliency part. Always we need to ask the same question: if that service is not available, or that person is not giving us an answer, or the software is down, whatever things, what could be the alternative? alternative plan to mitigate. Again, the availability number was too high, 99.95. So it is like, so he's always asking for the number than the number of feature we are pushing. So the mindset of the people, the entire team, like 400 team members, got shifted from releasing the feature to the reaching the maintaining the 99.95 at any point of time, and also the technical debt keeping zero. I mean, very low. So, and in a year, all the technical team shifted their focus, right? So it was like a debate between product owner. Product owner wants the feature, and we actually started neglecting product owner because we cannot have that feature without all these things, right? Then the product owners complained to see chief product officer. That is because a debate between CPO and CTO. But CTO said like we cannot say no, but that the technical depth is much critical, much more important than the release. So it was a shift, I should say, because even the developers were also reluctant to adopt it. But finally, I should say like CTO did his job very nicely, and everybody was. There are a lot of reports started coming up based on the technical depth. There are a lot of different points. So and people started loving it.
I think the point which you brought up is very important. I would say probably you went to the other extreme of totally eliminating technical debt, and Kumaran and I have had a lot of these discussions around technical debt for a long time on this on these sessions, and so I would say the decision has to be based on quality on both sides, because you cannot ignore features because that is what brings revenue, right?
True.
And removing technical debt is part of maintaining your existing revenue, right? So there has to be a balance. So I agree. So I guess all of you went through a tough time and then made a call, but I'm sure technical debt, the culture which you have brought in probably will pay back in the long term, and hopefully you get more features also soon. Kumaran, you're on mute.
Okay, I kind of loved what when Jiffin used the word resilient, right? We kind of underestimate the resilience in the applications. So why in another word, if I have to continue with the elephant matter, right? We are afraid of an elephant falling down. It's too big, right? It can crush people. So if it was another, let's say an ant or a rabbit or something, you'll not be too worried about eating you and nothing will happen. But if an elephant hits you, it can cause colossal damage. So the resilient part, right? If something goes wrong and we know how to recover from that, that could be another way of handling an elephant. Right, so even if the elephant runs over you, it's like in the cartoon Tom and Jerry kind of thing, right? You can recover yourself, get up and go. You'll become flat for 2 seconds and then you will become up again. So if building resiliency, as what he was telling, right, Jiffin was telling, could be another key tactic in handling an elephant.
Yep.
Avinash, Venkat, do you have any other thoughts on how you would handle, or you have handled elephants, or how you would go about handling an elephant?
Yeah, as Sifin tell, actually he has altogether avoid the technical debt. So in our case, it is not possible, right? So our core is technical. So whenever we are going for a production level application, so first I will gather all our team members. Mentally, I would prepare them. So why we are going for these changes, why we need to have these features. So then I'll mentally prepare them so that they know what is the importance, why we need to have these kind of features, and we should also get ready. And whenever we are going for the release, then for after the production release, then everyone would be available for any kind of issues which happen in the production level. Though we do all kind of testing before production, but still, we always get some issues only at the production server. So my only preparation was I'll mentally prepare the team members. They will ready for another 48 hours to tackle any kind of problems on this.
Okay. Avinash, any other thought how you have handled these big elephants?
Frankly speaking, we are actually handling. Earlier, I was not a part of that level of technical discussions. Now,
Okay.
now it is, but it is an ongoing.
Previously, you used
process.
to deal with rabbits and goats. Now you have to deal with the elephant.
Yeah, correct, very correct.
Okay.
So it's a going experience.
Interesting. Okay. So I think that was great. So if I kind of summarize, right, I think it's interesting that key things, elephants come in different sizes and colors. One, when you're trying to tack a elephant, suddenly you might realize there's another elephant also. And don't really eat it one bite at a time. As you said, it will stink. So get more people to eat along with you so that you can finish off the elephant quickly. And the other thing is about preparing stakeholders, right? Involving them seems to be a very key component of tackling an elephant. And then it's also about if the elephant stamps on you, how can you recover the resilience bit? But one very interesting thing which I found out, right? Looks like tackling an elephant is actually not a technical problem. None of us really, even though we are technology people and solution people here, right? At least in whatever we have discussed, technology didn't come up. Is it? I'm just as a closing thing, right? I just want to think: is it by chance, or do you all actually kind of think that actually the technology problem, right? Writing this code or that code is not a great thing in tackling an elephant.
No, I agree. I agree. Actually, I was last few days. I had this session from Robert Martin, Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
just a quick recommendation. All of you just go to YouTube and search for Uncle Bob. Brilliant guy, software architecture. He's pretty rude, pretty brash, but he's brilliant.
Yeah, and I saw his session on clean code, and he has some similar thing on clean architecture or something like that also. But I really liked the way he explains clean code, and he explains how programmers actually think about solving the problems when they do it, but they once it starts working, they never clean it up. That's his sort of problem, and he gives good examples and something to learn for all software developers, I would say.
Nice. Okay, great. I think we are at time. Nice discussion. Thanks all of you for joining and your inputs. It was fun as usual. Catch you in 2 weeks from now. And also in the group, I will share the recording. And you have any topics that you want to deal, please feel free to share it. It can be a challenge that you're facing in the current project or something you solved, but you're just curious to see how else can I solve it better, something like that. That's also fine. Anything, or you heard somebody else talking about a problem, throw it here. And the beauty of this thing is, since we talk architecture, right, it's not just actually we talk very little about technologies specifically. Sometimes we do get there, but it's more at a architecture level. So typically any kind of problem, we'll be happy to take it up and discuss it. Okay. Thanks all. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a very good weekend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.